Welcome to The Skinny for Friday, June 12th. I'm Mitch Perry, the senior political reporter for the Florida Phoenix, joined with my colleague, Ray Roa, editor-in-chief of Creative Loafing newspaper. Hey, Ray.
Good morning, Mitch. How's it going?
Good, other than I just fell on the studio here a moment ago, and I'm still rubbing my arm. Thankfully, I'm not injured significantly here. But hey, it's great to be here, folks. So now you're a big soccer person. When John Hill was on here, you guys were talking about going to watch Saturday morning Premier League. So do you care about the World Cup?
I was up later than I should have been last night watching South Korea pull that off. And I'm probably not even going to watch the basketball game this weekend because I'll be all worn out from watching soccer.
Okay. I mean, I want to give the respect. I mean, I'm not a huge soccer person, but, you know, what have you.
We want to thank the listeners last week, too, for pitching in. We did fall a little bit short of our goal, so if you haven't been able to contribute yet, please log on to WMNF.org, make a donation to any of the shows or The Skinny so that we can reach our goal and make sure that public affairs stays on the air here at WMNF Tampa.
Okay, so later in the program, we're going to talk. We had one of the candidates for St. Pete mayor on a couple weeks ago. We've got another one, St. Pete council member Brandy Gabbard, who's going to be on the show here. She's in her 9th and final year of serving on the St. Pete City Council in the northeastern part of the city. She will be here in just a few minutes. But first, well, the reverberations continue about what's going to happen to certain potentially local programs and services that local government provides in Florida because of this new proposed constitutional amendment on the ballot that would attempts to bring serious property tax reform relief to owners of homestead properties in Florida. And of course, you know, what's that going to do to our cities and counties here? So joining us to discuss that right now is Bob Enriquez of the Hillsborough County Property Appraiser, who's been in that job since 2012. Bob, good morning.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here, Mitch. I appreciate you. I have to just take it aside. I saw you fall, and it just reminded me as we get older, you know, a lot of times you say you don't fall as well. I fall better than I've ever fallen. I just don't land as well.
Okay.
So maybe that's a good segue into this, into this discussion.
Yes. Okay. So, Bob, now I know the numbers. You came out a while ago, I think, when this proposal, because, you know, I think for our listeners, you're following this. Ron DeSantis finally came out with a plan a few weeks ago after talking about this for a year. And then the legislature voted on it in 48 hours a couple weeks ago, and they changed some of it. So some of what, you know, even in the short time that we knew what DeSantis had proposed has changed. So at one point you were throwing at the figure that it was going to be about a $478 million hit on the county. But that's now the school taxes are now taken out of this. Does that change that number?
No, that is what the school's taken out. The hit originally was more in the order of $725 million when the exemption potentially would go to $250,000.
Right. Okay, so again, for the listeners here, I think you probably know this, but anyway, basically the ballot summary doesn't even say $150,000, but this proposal, if passed in November, would give you a homestead exemption, raise it from $50,000 to $150,000 the first year, and then up to $250,000 after the second year, and then it's somewhat ambiguous about whether it'd be totally eliminated after that. Okay, so you've been obviously crunching a lot of these numbers. The thing is, let's talk about, you know, law enforcement or public safety, because that's something that Governor DeSantis said recently is like, okay, do not believe that these local governments say they're going to be cutting that because, you know, you have to prioritize here. I know in Tampa, not Hillsborough, but in Tampa, just reporting on this over the years, I know that the property taxes go for every cent of public safety and then some, because Tampa spends a lot of money of their budget on public safety.
Right.
What's it like for Hillsborough County?
Well, I mean, it's similar. I mean, every this not one size fits all statewide, but generally you're looking at 60 to 70% of property tax revenue goes to public safety. Now, you're going to hear a lot of numbers, and now I know the governor went to Yale, I went to Princeton, so maybe the numbers are different in New Haven, but I can tell you that if you're going to hear, well, property taxes in Hillsborough County only fund about 15% of the overall budget. That's true.
Okay.
But for core services, it's a much higher percentage.
And core
60-70% of core services,
which of course is public safety. What else would you underneath?
Well, and that's part of the discussion as well. Is they've kind of defined core services, but I mean there's certain things that are services that we may consider core for, you know, depending on your perspective.
Right.
But generally, you think law enforcement, fire rescue, The service on the debt. There's a lot. The important thing to remember, first of all, the number we threw out, the $478 million, that's all the taxing authorities. That's not just city, county. It's not just the Plant City, Temple Terrace, Tampa,
so special districts.
County. It's all the special districts, right. And they all have a tendency. And in their case, their percentage in terms of their budget might be much higher than what we've talked about. Children's Board, what happens to those kinds of services? Yeah. So obviously, it's the summertime now, and if you've got your kid in a summer program so that you can go to work, that's a core service for you. But that wouldn't necessarily be the first thing that somebody would think about would be paid. And the big thing for people to realize. And again, I don't think the argument really is about whether or not we all need some break, because we're all feeling the stress of high gas prices, high property insurance, you name it, right? Car insurance. That's not really the argument anymore. It's whether this is the right approach. And to me, all they've done by defining, quote, core services like public safety, and we would all agree that needs to be funded first, is that they're saying that those core services, they don't guarantee they could be fully funded. They just guarantee that they get the first bite at the apple. Well, if the apple's already bitten in half, there's not as much apple to go to these. And so there are a lot of communities out there. Now, some place like Hillsborough County might be able to find a way to fund that, but then have to make very difficult decisions on things that people care about otherwise. Some communities won't even be able to fund with their property tax revenue that would be left, fund public safety.
Right. A lot of smaller cities, and we've got over 400 cities in the state.
And Temple Terrace might not even pay for police, right?
Gabbard on in a bit after me, and Pinellas is very different. I mean, if you walk across the street, you're in a different municipality, right? So that's different than Hillsborough County. How would each of those individuals? They're going to have to look at combining services. There's a lot to this that really needed more discussion than 2 days.
Yeah, absolutely. We're speaking with Hillsborough County property appraiser Bob Enriquez about the new constitutional amendment on the ballot regarding property taxes. Interesting, Bob. I was at the discussion last year, I guess it was, when I think it was last summer, even at the Tiger Bay Club, when you were a member of that panel, along with Bertie Jacques, Pinellas County Republican legislator. And I was looking at the story. I wrote a story about it at the time, and I was looking at that where you actually asked Bertie Jacques at the time if there might be a trust fund put into this, and Bernie said, well, everything's on the table. And it's so interesting because Governor DeSantis, in his proposal, did include a trust fund that would allow local governments, they would offer grants to local governments for maybe some core services, including education, because his plan included, of course, taking property taxes even from schools at that point. And then the legislature took away that trust fund. They had their own reasons for that. He said the other day, well, if this passes, I'm going to bring the legislature in,
special session.
Yeah, and we're going to try to put that through. So we don't know about that. But the point is about that, would you feel a little more comfortable if you had that trust fund, or what's your thoughts about that?
Well, it's an approach to try to backfill the lost revenue. My concern with that is that then you are asking local communities, municipalities, taxing authorities, like the special districts that we've talked about, to go to Tallahassee to beg for their money every year. That's an awful lot of power. And we really don't know what and where that trust fund. I will tell you, in my 8 years in the state legislature, I used to make light of the fact that the term trust was one of the most overused and least.
Well, look at the Sadowski Trust Fund, for example.
We would sweep those, and the other thing is, we're assuming that things are always going to be great, and we understand that we've had. Folks moving in here, right. And it's been and we've got a lot of, Tallahassee's been awash with money, and local communities have been as well. But that's, what if we have a recession or something like that? Where would that money come from? And again, we don't know what you're talking about, billions of dollars, and you're also giving Tallahassee the ability to then tell local communities based on. We've seen this at the federal level, and we've seen it to some extent at the state level. We're not going to give you your money for your park until you endorse a certain candidate, or you have a parade we don't like, or you have a certain policy we don't like. So I think that there's good and bad, and we understand that there's room for property tax reform, and I've actually given some ideas to the legislature up there about that. But at the end of the day, you still have the ability to go to Councilwoman Gabbard, or if you're in Hillsborough, before the city council or county commission, as we're seeing right now with the debate about the Rays Stadium, and express your, whether you're in favor or not. We're not going to have the ability for citizens to go to Tallahassee necessarily and advocate for for their particular projects and how they want their local community to look like. This is a fundamental change in how we fund local government, and how we shape our local communities, which right now, good, bad, or indifferent, theoretically, individual citizens have the ability to have some say-so in that. That would not be the case under this scenario. Again, I think there's ways that they could have approached giving folks some relief. But whether or not this is the right approach, I told somebody the other day, I said, and regardless, and if the argument's about spending, and I understand that, they could have come from that perspective and put some guardrails around local spending by tying, spending to inflation plus a government cost index or doing something like that. But what they've done, I think, in this case, is without a plan to how, what we really don't know. And there's no way to claw this back. Once you give the average citizen that $2,000 back, you're not going to come back 2 years from now and say, this didn't really work. We're going to change the system back.
Yes. Again, we're talking to Bob Enriquez, Hillsborough County property appraiser. Esther, there was a lawsuit filed against this right now. Basically, not to necessarily throw this out on the ballot, but to change the way the ballot summary is. Right now, the ballot, what people will get when they look at this, theoretically, right now in November, it's going to say, quote, save our homes from excessive property taxes. Democrats at the time, a couple weeks ago, said that's pretty biased there, and that's what this lawsuit says right now. It's Jamie Cole was an attorney out of Broward County. He says that it's biased and it doesn't say actually the ballot summary doesn't actually say what it's going to do. Any thoughts about that?
Well, I think that he has a basis for the lawsuit in that if you read the ballot summary, we've had questions within the office. So let's say that you're a senior citizen. And you have what we call the super seniors exemption. You're really not paying a great deal in property taxes, but you're still paying the school portion, right? Under this scenario, you're really not getting any break at all. So are you being saved from excessive property taxes? No, you're not getting much of a break at all. Whereas some other folks, particularly ones that have moved here more recently, are getting a much larger break because of the fact that the property taxes have gone up. So that part's somewhat misleading. I also understand that it doesn't mention the 150 to then 250.
Right.
And remember, part of this constitutional amendment is this idea that you have to be a resident here after January 1st of 2027 for 5 years. That concept was found unconstitutional back in 1982. So that's another part of it that is interesting. And we also aren't talking about the 10% to 5%.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that, actually. So, right, this plan will also cap property tax value increases on non-homestead properties like apartments, businesses, Airbnbs from 10% a year, which you get right now, down to just 5% a year. How much of a hit would that be for the county?
That's again, based on the 2025 tax roll, that's about another $83 million of lost revenue. And when the governor made his proposal, he spoke to the fact that this was to help save small business. This isn't limited to small business. This is limited to, it's not limited at all. It's all non-homesteaded property. So clearly, your local coffee shop that's mom and pop is getting a lot smaller break than say your local electric company or high-end he made a big point of saying that we want to have these people that own these $10 million beach homes, pay their fair share. They're getting a big break under this scenario. So there's a lot here that just, and I'm sure it'll be hotly debated. I know we only have a few minutes left here, but I think over the course of time, we probably could take hours to try to figure this out.
Well, I understand that the Hillsborough County Commission is going to get like a briefing on this next Wednesday. Are you going to be involved at all with any of that?
We've supplied numbers to them. They haven't asked me to speak specifically. And again, it's important from my perspective. It's not necessarily taking a position one way or the other. I think that but our role is to provide the education. Interestingly enough, and this is really a fallout of the Hope, Florida controversy, is that there was legislation passed that said that local governments can't expend funds to, clearly not to advocate one way or the other, to inform.
Yeah.
So it's really put us in an interesting position because we had had a calculator. And now we're not sure that we can do that for individual citizens, but the state doesn't have the same prohibition. So the governor already has an advocate.
But he has said that that's no longer operable because that was used when the school taxes or taxes were, school were not part of that. Right? So he said that the other day, I believe, actually, when he did his press conference on that. Ray, do you want to?
Well, I know you're having the state of the market. I want to get this down just so we're clear. I know that you're going to have some guests. I think Ryan Severino is going to be there.
Yeah, he's a nationally known economist.
So wait, I'm sorry, let's talk about this. You're talking about an event happening next
Wednesday, June 17th. That is happening. State of the Market. You've done this before.
Yeah, this is our 5th annual State of the Market. It's a wonderful event. It's fast paced. Some of the most eminent experts in the real estate market, everything from brokers to realtors to investors to you name it, on various panel discussions. It goes from 8 o'clock till about noon, 12:30. A lot of people come because it's in the Cuban Club. It's in Ybor City, and we have pastelitos and Cafe Con Leche.
So I think we can say that on the air and not get in trouble with that.
But no, it's a wonderful event. Ryan Severino is a nationally known economist, and he comes every year. And it's
is he related to Anthony Severino, the former Jesuit quarterback?
No.
Okay, I know we got that coach over here.
But Joe Severino coached me at one time when I was a freshman at Tampa Catholic. But no, he's not. But it's a wonderful event. I would encourage people, if they're interested, go on the website or on our Facebook or any social media. We have nearly 700 RSVPs, which is much more than the place will hold. So hopefully not everybody shows up. But it's a great event, and we hold it every year. It's a great, and there will be discussion, I'm sure, about what this means for the market, and most economists or most people that actually look at this proposal say it actually doesn't stimulate the real estate market. It actually raises residential prices, and so that's kind of interesting as well.
Interesting. Also, the Wall Street Journal kind of criticized DeSantis' proposal yesterday. Well, Bob, we're going to leave it there.
I got to ask Bob one question because I'd be a bad reporter if I did. You talked about it last week, Coach, on Down and Dirty, and I know that you're thinking about running for mayor. Your name's been tossed out there. Your property appraiser, you love Tampa so much. You talked about how you picked up you just read and absorb everything, but you're a constitutional officer. These cuts actually won't affect you, right? You have a great office. I just got a compliment on your website.
Know that for sure either. I mean, originally we weren't included in the core services. The legislature then changed they amended the original plan to put us in there. But again, all it says that we're a core service. It doesn't guarantee our funding. Now, I will tell you that this plan will complicate our what we do in our office, from homestead enforcement to just trying to figure out, because you're going to have different systems depending on how long you've been in your home. You'll be under basically the old homesteading property or homestead property guidelines, and then you'll have some that are in the new one, and then we're going to have to figure out. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But again, that doesn't guarantee. This is important for folks to know. The core services are not guaranteed to be funded. All they've said is they are core services, which is a good thing. But if the money's not there, which was kind of interesting, and as an aside, then I'll leave you. A lot of the members, this was all orchestrated very smartly, and most of the stuff in Tallahassee is, that the timing of this after the budget passed. So the governor, and he was very open about the fact that he had the veto pen.
Maximum leverage.
Over all of all the projects. But I laughed, having spent 8 years in the legislature, thinking, okay, so what if you got a water project in the budget, at the local level, and there's some match to it or whatever it may be, and then you get down in 2 years from now, there's no money to pay for that project. You're not getting it anyhow, whether it was vetoed or not. So it's just kind of interesting how this all went about.
And I guess I just want to know, what could possibly convince you, as you weigh the decision to jump into the Tampa mayoral race, to leave this wonderful office that you have, that you've built out, wonderful people all around you? Like, what could be the tipping point?
Well, I mean, ultimately, and I spoke to it last week. I'm a fifth-generation Tampa native, and it's very organic. That it's not. I didn't wake up one day, and I know you have Councilwoman Gabbard on here, and she's running. It's very personal to me, and I think that there's a sense that Tampa is, we're growing. And I think from natives, and again, whether you've been here 5 generations or you moved, 5 days ago you unloaded your van. The special spirit of what is Tampa, what is the Tampa Bay area, that drew people here to some extent. If we don't keep that tradition meets tomorrow thought, the folks that are coming here for a particular reason, and then it becomes where they came from. I mean, that's really the thing that drives me, and a lot of natives that are saying, well, sometimes I don't feel like I'm in Tampa. And that's not from the standpoint that we're, down in Water Street and it's just different. It's not that. It's something else. It's that welcoming spirit. And so I think that's the thing that drives me, and I think frankly, there's a lot of folks out there that see that it's time for some change, but that also somebody that has that sense for what we've come from, where we are, and where we're going. And so that's probably what drives me the most, but probably what drives me even more in making that decision is, what does it mean to my family? What does it mean?
Sure.
And it's not all about just, the comfort zone of being in this great position. And I'm blessed, and I'm in a unique position. This is my legacy, or my
everybody loves you, Coach.
Well, I appreciate that. My daughter's sitting in here with us. Hopefully she still does, but but it's also a tough position,
Sure.
I mean, if I've been yelled at for not enough playing time for somebody's son. I've been yelled at for somebody's taxes.
I can't imagine the conversations you're having as you weigh this one.
So we'll see what happens. We've got a little bit of time to make a final decision.
All right, Bob Enriquez.
Thank you, Coach.
You didn't get it out of me today.
Yeah, okay. No.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, now you just heard sitting next to Bob right now, we're going to bring in right now is St. Petersburg City Council member Brandy Gabbard, who is one of the 6 people running for mayor of St. Petersburg. Good morning, Brandy.
Good morning. Thank you, Mitch, for having me.
Great to have you here. A lot to talk to you about. A lot. We've got it's 11:27 right now. If you're just tuning in right now, you're listening to Skinny here on WMNF 88.5 FM. I'm Mitch Perry with Ray Roa, and we're with Brandy Gabbard. So, Brandy, there was a debate this week. I want to ask you a couple things about that. One of the things that came up was it's kind of maybe an interesting way to bring this up, but I just thought, because I've written about this, it was the St. Petersburg's Police Department's 287G agreement with ICE.
Yeah.
Okay, this was brought up. Now, again, it was said, Mayor Welch said, no, I talked to Chief Holloway. I definitely, somebody said like he wasn't aware of that. He definitely was very much aware of it. The council, just like in Tampa, did not, they didn't have to be brought into this, so they weren't. What are your thoughts with that, having that agreement right now with ICE? Because you don't have to. Mayor Welch misspoke on Tuesday night, though. He said that he had to do that. No, counties have to do that in Florida under state law. Cities do not.
Yes, absolutely. And I have met with Chief Holloway myself as a council member. And, I don't have the leverage as a council member to direct the chief. And so as mayor, that would be a conversation that he and I would have. Fundamentally, I do not believe in these agreements. I do not believe in what ICE is doing in our communities. And ultimately, I believe that public safety needs to ensure trust within our community. These agreements degrade that. And so, what we see happening in St. Petersburg is not an assault on our community, but that does not alleviate the fear that is there. And so I think as mayor, it would be very important that the chief and I work very closely together on that. And if, under my leadership, I would certainly be asking him to remove that.
Last week, the city council had a very big vote, and it did vote to support this on a 4-3 vote to spend $590,000 on a study on whether it will be beneficial to St. Petersburg residents to stay with Duke Energy Florida or go the independent route where the city would run its own municipal service. And this could save tax ratepayers in the long run, but undoubtedly will probably be expensive up front. You, along with Councilmember Richie Floyd, have been really leading the way on this. It almost did pass. It was a super close. It came down to Lisette Hanowitz at the end there. I believe both Mayor Welch and Charlie Crist, who, if people aren't aware, is also running in this race. They don't support this, but you do.
Absolutely. We talk about affordability, right? There's a lot of pieces that go into affordability. And I believe that, any control or any leverage that we can have as a city to even negotiating with Duke in a current agreement negotiation that is happening, that can help to bring and drive cost down for our residents, that is our responsibility. And this study, I look at this as an exercise in due diligence. I've been very clear with the people who support this, and even those individuals have endorsed my campaign as a Duke certified or Dump Duke certified candidate. I'm very clear that I make no promises that we are actually going to be able to move forward financially and feasibly with a municipal power company. But I do believe that we owe it to our residents to do our due diligence to see if cost can be brought down by doing that. And if nothing else, to be able to utilize those results to really gain leverage in this negotiation.
I think former Governor Crist said that, why don't we look at the Clearwater just did this big study. Why don't we just look what they did? What do you say to that?
Well, Clearwater's a different city. We have a lot more assets throughout our city. There's a lot more to explore as to what the cost would be to assume what is currently there. And St. Pete is a unique place. We brag about that quite often, and it's unique in a lot of ways, and this is one of them. We need to do our own study. We need to understand what the implications would be to our residents. And we did contract with a company that has done the Clearwater study. And so, will they be able to draw from some of that knowledge and experience? Absolutely. That will help to maybe expedite, but I don't think that it replaces what our fiduciary is to our community.
So again, we're talking right now with St. Petersburg City Council member Brandy Gabbard, who is now a candidate for mayor of St. Petersburg. That primary election is on August 18th. So Brandy, I guess sometimes we should have opened up with this, but I want to get into some other things, specifics first. But what are the main issues that you are running on here to lead the city going forward?
Well, my campaign is focused really around the issues that matter the most to the people of St. Petersburg. We start, with, I think, our greatest opportunity and our greatest vulnerability at the same time, which is our desire to become a resilient city. And that doesn't just speak to, improving our infrastructure. That is certainly top of the list and must be done, especially after what we saw in 2024. But it looks like, helping people be able to build higher, stronger, updating our permitting system. I'm committed to creating a streamlined permitting system that will help people be able to build better, faster. Making sure that we are addressing all levels of quality of life and affordability for our residents. I'm committed to ending food insecurity in South St. Petersburg, which has been a condition that has plagued our community for far too long. Again, we talked about, exploring municipal electric. That is also an affordability issue. And, really just all of the things that impact the quality of life. We're at a crossroads in the city of St. Petersburg. We need to move forward in a way that puts our residents first when it comes to the policies and how we spend the dollars that we use for our resident services.
Okay, and so let's talk about the fact that you are running against Mayor Ken Welch, who you were a longtime supporter of. In fact, when you mentioned, resiliency or the storms, I remember seeing you in September of 24. Remember when Senator Sheldon Whitehouse came down here to talk about climate in the Short Acres area, and that was right before we got the devastating 1-2 punch of Hurricanes Helene and Milton. And I asked you if you had mayoral ambitions at that time, and you said you did, but you probably were not going to challenge Ken Welch in 2026. But here you are. You definitely are doing this. So what changed?
I think everything for everyone who lives in the city of St. Petersburg changed after the storms of 2024, myself included. I believe that our city deserves a government that will respond appropriately and swiftly and with empathy in our times of greatest need. I did not see that from this mayor. Our city team was all hands on deck. Our city team worked tirelessly in those days, even sometimes when their own homes were damaged. What I saw was a mayoral office that left people behind. And I was in my communities every single day for months after the storms. I knew what those individuals needed, and I did not see that being responded to appropriately. And I believe that our city needs leadership that will listen, that will act, but will also be proactive. We knew long before 2024 where our vulnerabilities were. And as a council member that represented one of the most vulnerable districts, I was working very, very hard to try to shine a light on that and get that to be addressed by our city.
So let me interject, because I think Mayor Welch was asked about this the other night at the NAACP debate, and he said, there's only so much preparation you can do when you have the Helene. Let's just talk about that for a moment, which was something the strongest I think we've ever seen in St. Petersburg.
Yeah.
So it's unfair to say that how much you could actually prepare for something like that when you have the storm surge that we never saw in the history of the city.
We're never going to keep out 7+ feet of storm surge. That is not the goal when it comes to becoming a resilient city. What we have to have is vision that will help our city learn how to live with the water. The permitting process, we had elevated that numerous times over the course of the couple of years before 2024 storms. We had a community listening session in February of that year with neighborhoods that had already been flooding, asking for us to do more. We already knew, and we did not do anything about it. And so under my leadership, we will take a proactive approach as it comes to all levels of resiliency planning and making sure that we are working alongside our community to listen to what they need, learn the lessons that we learned after the storms, and be better prepared for the next time.
What are the...
No. Go ahead,
just one more, and then we'll move on infrastructure, on resiliency. Now, the city has been doing a lot. Well, I think the last time you were here, you talked about that. But I mean, just to let our listeners know, and myself as a citizen of St. Pete, what's the city doing right now to try to deal with some of this? Which obviously you're on the ground here. When people talk about the storm, because throughout Florida, of course, every place is vulnerable. But so what's St. Pete doing right now that they can? Because I know it's very expensive to do some of these things.
It's absolutely very expensive. And, we have for the last decade, during the time I've been on city council and after the spills that happened in 2016 when we were put on a consent order,
the sewage spills,
we have invested millions and millions of dollars into our wastewater system. That is very important work. The work that has been done to elevate our systems at our most vulnerable wastewater plants, that is resiliency projects. And so very, very happy to have been on council, pushed for those to be done alongside my colleagues, budgeted for those to be done. But at the same time, we have to invest in our stormwater system. And while we are doing that in kind of a piecemealed way, we have a $700 million stormwater master plan that we have to find a way to implement and escalate. And we're not able to do it with our standard CIP budget. It's just not going to happen. I have been pushing for quite some time for us to reprioritize and start to balance out that wastewater, stormwater funding and really get to a place where we are equally investing in the stormwater system because, yes, we need to make sure that we can flush those toilets, but we also need to make sure we can keep as much of that floodwater out of our homes as possible, especially in places that are nowhere near the coast.
Yeah, and by the way, sorry, when we're that is, let's talk about, you mentioned water. What about these water bills? Okay, yeah. This has been a huge issue for a while now, and I don't know, has it been completely addressed in the city? When people are getting these outrageously high bills that they say they are not using the amount of water that they are being charged for?
I will tell you that City Council has really started to take a hard look at this. We are currently going through a process where we will be doing a management evaluation of our billing and collections department. I am a member of the Budget and Finance Committee that is pushing for that, and we will be moving that forward. And I think we'll get a lot of answers through that. That is a mechanism that City Council, a lever we can pull to explore what's going on within our departments. But City Council does not control the staff. That comes from the mayor's office and from leadership. And so I believe that we still have a lot of questions that should have been answered by the administration. We have yet to get those answers. And I believe that transparency and accountability really at its core rests in issues like this.
Councilwoman, thinking about Ken Babby going on tour here in Tampa, really just talking in Tampa like, we can't be in St. Petersburg anymore. It really seemed like finally the Rays were Tampa's problem. But now with this property tax thing, everything looks to be delayed. You've obviously had disagreements with the mayor about how to develop the gas plant district. As a candidate, how are you talking to your community about what to do with the Rays, especially as the Rays are pretty much talking about how they just don't have a future at Tropicana Field?
Yeah, they certainly have a couple years future coming up. They will be, at least for another 2.5 seasons, they will be playing at Tropicana Field. We've invested a lot of money into that stadium. And so, while we're going through kind of the debate in the public eye about what should happen with the overall historic gas plant redevelopment, I think that it is important to remember that that is going to be a 30-year plus redevelopment, whether we choose a master plan developer, whether we as the city decide to maintain it ourselves and develop it. And so there is space for the Rays to continue to have conversation with us to either extend, if that is what is needed, or something else down the road. I am open to that.
Again, we're speaking with Brandy Gabbard, St. Petersburg City Council member, on the gas plant. You have led the effort to slow down the mayor's plan on picking a developer for the gas plant. Now, he said the other day at the debate, he said, like, hey, we've had plenty of time to talk about this. It's now the time for action. What do you say to that?
Well, I mean, absolutely. I go back to everything is different in our city after the vote that would have kept the Rays and Hines deal together.
Yeah. Which is
right before the storms.
Yeah, right? Summer of 2024,
absolutely. Everything is different now.
Yeah.
And we have a new opportunity to really be able to reimagine what we want this massive redevelopment to look like. And as we know that there are going to be more challenging financial times ahead, I think that it is prudent of us to press pause, really take a look at the bigger picture, and make sure that we are not just using this as a way to say that we have progress in our city, but really using this as a way to reach maximum community benefit. And all of the studies that have been done in the past, all of the work that has been done in the past will be included in the planning effort that I am leading alongside ULI Tampa Bay and community members from across our city. All of that information is valid and will be used. But what we're trying to do is create a plan that will actually bring the community to the table to tell us what they want from our greatest resource. We have not done that yet. And so I am committed to making sure that that plan goes through. And if it runs in parallel with anything that this current mayor does, then we will come out on the other side and see how we can move forward from there, maybe under a hopefully new administration, and if not, at least with the community voice at heart through the negotiations.
This election is fast approaching for people in St. Petersburg, but you haven't checked out of your job at City Council. You can tell when you watch the meetings. Colleen Wright at the Tampa Bay Times reporting that the last time you and Mayor Welch actually met was over a year ago. What is it like for you as you wrap up your City Council time as somebody who needs to make decisions for constituents? You serve the same ones to not have met the mayor. Have you met since that article came out? What's that like?
Well, I mean, the good news is that I have fantastic relationships with our city team. And that's really where the real work happens, right? And constituent service is always going to be at the heart of everything I do every single day. I take the job that I currently have been given by the voters very seriously, and I will vote with my integrity and the amount of knowledge and experience I have until the very last day. Whether or not I have a relationship with the mayor directly does not affect how effective I am as a city council member. City council does amazing things, and I will continue to lead for my district until the very final vote.
I also want to mention right now to our listeners that Brandy Gabbard is the second of the 6 candidates that we have planned to interview before the August 18th primary. We've already had one candidate, Kevin Backdorf. Next week, we're going to have Maria Scruggs. We've also spoken with Jim Large about coming on. The two of the major candidates, Charlie Crist and Ken Welch, have also been asked to come on, and they have not so far said they're going to, at least before this primary. But I want to put that out there because we're talking about Mayor Welch here. And this show is very much available for him to come on before August 18th. Continuing on, another criticism I think you've had, or the mayor, maybe not about this, but the Science Center, okay? I think you have accused the mayor of slow walking that plan. I remember this, I was still with Bay News 9 when this kind of was revived by former council member Robert Blackman. Do you think that's had anything to do with why the mayor wasn't so super supportive of it?
Well, I don't want to speak for anyone else. Can't tell you exactly why that project, kind of tanked for a little while before City Council brought it back and ultimately moved it forward. But, I can tell you that it can be challenging when you have disagreements. And so did that play a part? Potentially, but I can't, specifically speak to that.
Let's talk about the Science Center, because that is a building that has a lot of potential. Mm-hmm. It needs a lot of work, obviously. I know for people who used to live lived in St. Petersburg back when it was around and it was a really important thing. And now that we talk the emphasis on STEM, of course. Where are we at with that process?
Yeah, so the community advocates and group that have come together, they're working very hard to move that project forward now that they have control over it. I'm not directly involved with their group, but I do know that, it's going to be a big hill for them to climb to get there. But let's not just talk about the Science Center. It has been project after project in our city over the last 5 years that quite frankly, has been challenging to see go to the wayside or not else? Be moved forward.
Talk to us more.
Right now we are running the Mahaffey Theater. And that's not a city enterprise, right? We don't have the resources to really be able to do that. But here we are, because we were not able to reach negotiation with the entity that had held control of that for 15 years and put a lot of their own time and money, blood, sweat, and tears into it. That's just another example of how we need to really focus on our public-private partnerships, especially in a time where potentially tax dollars are at stake, and we're going to have so many less resources to be able to actually work with. These partnerships are important to us, and making sure that we are moving projects forward that meet a need for our community and doing so in a responsible way. I mean, right now there's a plan from the administration to do a $160+ million renovation on the marina. Where are we going to come up with that money if the tax dollars are at stake based upon whatever happens in November? To me, there was a path forward for a public-private partnership years ago that this administration should have really pushed forward in a much different way. And that's another missed opportunity. There's so many missed opportunities for our city, our municipal services center. I mean, we could be here all day. So I think, the point is that having leadership that understands how to get projects across the finish line and really making sure that our team is focused on what is for the greatest good of our community.
Yeah, we don't have a crystal ball in front of us, but we're really, should you become mayor, you're looking at a time when the preemption from Tallahassee will be unprecedented and will continue to just grow. It looks like, let's just say you do end a 287G agreement. A lawsuit could come from the state right away. How can you possibly, what are your ideas for leading under that kind of situation? I know it's kind of a hypothetical, but it seems a little closer than it is far away.
Well, certainly as a council member, I'm no stranger to preemption. We've had a lot of things over the years that we've had to walk back. Apprenticeship and disadvantaged worker ordinances. The list goes on. And I think one of the most striking and upsetting is this new DEI preemption, right? Diversity, equity, and inclusion lives within the heartbeat of St. Petersburg, and it is an economic driver for our city. And to know as an elected official that if you speak to these issues, you participate in these, parades, events, whatever it might be, that they could remove you from office is quite frankly an infringement on my rights as an American. And so it's very concerning to me. I do think, I had heard you talked about the lawsuit that was filed. I think there was a couple of towns maybe that are involved in that. That's the kind of political will that we're going to have to see all across the state of Florida.
Speaking about the DEI, last year we saw this. In fact, today, of course, is the tragic 10th year anniversary of the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando. And I'm thinking about the rainbow, that we had here, murals and what have you, crosswalks, right? Yeah. And that was another thing that came down last year. Somewhat federal transportation department, but also from Governor Ron DeSantis, and that was, and so the mayor had to deal with that. But now some were critical of the mayor. They said he should have fought back more against the DeSantis administration after the state ordered local governments to remove pavement markings. Cities such as Key West asked for and received an administrative hearing with FDOT to fight to maintain their rainbow crosswalks. But the mayor did not. I don't know. It's a very hard situation. Easy to criticize on the side on that. But do you have any thoughts about that?
Absolutely. To be in our community in those moments as those crosswalks were being removed. They're symbols of our pride. They're symbols of our history. They're symbols of our community. It wasn't just the Black History Matters and the Pride mural. It was also a mural in front of USF St. Pete that was made by students. We're talking about pieces of our community that deserve for us as leaders to stand up for them. And you talk about people being critical. I was one of those. I didn't think that we did enough. And where I didn't think we truly did enough, not only in pushing back, was also in building coalitions. When you are being attacked from every angle, there's safety in numbers. And so coming together with other municipalities across the state that were also being attacked, we did not see that happening from the city of St. Petersburg. We kind of stood as an island. We also didn't see a lot of collaboration between the mayor's office and city council. As a city council member looking to be in that seat as the mayor, having that relationship and working together to make sure that we show a united front for our community, I believe shows the strength of the leadership. And that is something I am committed to as mayor.
Right. So you're saying that if you were, get elected mayor, having been a city council member for 9 years, that you obviously know the perspective of the council member, then there would be more interaction with the administration.
Absolutely.
Or in this case, the administration with the city council.
Absolutely. Those 8 individuals who represent our city are the heartbeat of each and every district. And how do we know what's going on in every corner of our city if we don't go to the experts? And so having that relationship, making sure that, we are talking about the matters that are important to each district, that's what those relationships will garner. And so I look forward to that.
Again, if you're just tuning in right now, you're listening to Skinny here on WMNF 88.5 FM. I'm Mitch Perry with Ray Roa. We're speaking with St. Petersburg City Council member Brandy Gabbard. She is on the ballot for the August 18th primary election for mayor. St. Petersburg Mayor Ken Welch is up for re-election, and there's 5 other competitors against him. A local issue yesterday that took place at the city council. Tell me more about this. This whole issue with residential parking changes or potential changes. Now, to me, it seems like, again, coming from the big city of San Francisco, to me, it's more of the city becoming just like a more popular place. And this is one of the growing pains of that is you just can't drive up to some place where you want to immediately and park. Obviously not in maybe downtown, but even some of the outlying areas. So you had a discussion yesterday on the option of requiring residential parking passes. So what was the flavor of the discussion yesterday on that?
Yeah, ultimately, I just want to say I really appreciate the work that our staff and Chair Hanowitz did on that potential change. Ultimately, it did not come to a vote just because I don't believe that there was enough appetite for making that change at this time. Probably something that we need to explore a little bit more into the future, and would be something I would look forward to working with her on.
What are the specifics of what? Again, you didn't take any action yesterday, but what are some people proposing here to deal with this issue?
Yeah, certainly we have other places close to downtown where there are residential only parking, and so we do have a model for it. But this was really to expand it citywide, and we have so many parts of our city. You can look at like the MLK Business District, for instance, that these places were built before there were quite as many people in our city. And there is that synergy between business community and the neighborhoods that I think for me as a council member yesterday, I did not feel like we were in a place where we were ready to really pull that lever to kind of tinker with that synergy between the two of them. You really always want to make sure as a legislator that you're looking at the unintended consequences. And even with the amendment that was proposed to create block buffers around some of our major streets, for me, there was too many unintended consequences that could happen for the business community. And people buy in these neighborhoods because they love that they can walk to these businesses. I don't think they'd be too happy if these businesses started to close because others could not park and come and patronage. And so making sure really as we do our legislation that we also do everything we can to do no harm. And I just don't think it was quite ready for prime time yet.
I want to tell our listeners, if you're tuning in right now, if you want to ask Councilmember Gabbard a question, the lines are open. I think they're open. I've seen these phones ringing and they're going silent, but 813-239-9663 is the phone number if you did want to do that.
I always go back and forth asking candidates this question. I don't want to come off unserious, Councilman, but if it wasn't you, who do you think you would vote for in the panel of candidates? Like, who do you feel like you most align with in there? And why? I guess more importantly is like, what are the values you really need in the next mayor?
Well, the candidates that are before us, I don't align with much, right? I think really I'm looking for someone who is going to be accountable and transparent, who is going to put the residents first and give our residents and our business community a seat at the table. I'm looking for someone who leads from empathy and looking for someone who is going to stand strong in the face of what we have coming before us. That's what I'm looking for.
I want to ask you something that was asked of you the other night, and you and most of the candidates did not really respond to this. And so I'm going to come back at you on this.
Sorry you showed up here today.
And that is that everybody was asked if there had been a mistake you'd made in office or in life, I guess, maybe even. And in retrospect, how you've looked at that and that you can talk about, acknowledge. And, when I watched that, I'm like, I feel like when the candidates didn't really respond to that directly, it's like, I get it because you're trying to put your best foot forward there in front of an audience here. But my God, we're all so human and we've all made mistakes. So, how about if I throw that question back at you again?
Yeah, absolutely. And, reflecting back, in the moment, nothing pops, right? Because you have a few seconds to come up with something. But, certainly I've reflected back on, what happened the other day. And, I think that a couple of things do come to mind. I wish that I would have been in a better place in my personal life. As, Bob Enriquez talked about, your family and everything else has to be in line. Had, I been in a better place, I probably would have ran when the seat was open last time. That I think is one thing that I can kind of look back on, but my personal life did not allow that at the time. I think also back to when I was a very kind of new green city council member, you mentioned the Sadowski Fund at the state level. I put a motion forward that would have, been able to lock down our housing capital improvements fund. That went a little bit sideways. And, if I had the same kind of strength behind me as a 9-year council member that I would have had then, I think that I would have pushed for that a little bit harder. I think I would have, maybe worked on that a little bit differently to get that passed. That did not pass. Ultimately, I ended up pulling it myself. It's not a fun day when you kill your own bill when you're especially a freshman in the seat. So I think, just kind of looking back and realizing that we all have room to learn. We all have, room to do better. And that's what I'm committed to.
We do have a call here. I think this is somebody talking about library management. Let's see here. Hello, is this Paul, I believe, on the air?
Yes, it sure is.
Hey, Paul.
My question for Ms. Gabbard is, I live in the neighborhood around the Obama Library, and I was there when Rick Kreisman rededicated it. And at the time, he said it would take 2 years and cost $5 million, and I kind of thought that was a lot of money. It actually took over 4 years and $16.5 million. And I think that the bid for proposal was probably weak. I think the contract was probably weak. It missed things like the asbestos that we all knew were there for decades. And they had to shut down for a year, ask for more money, come back again and again and again. And this is a renovation of a building. It gives me no confidence in the city's ability to manage any capital projects, much less the gas plant district. And, by the way, I think the stadium should still be saved. And the marina redevelopment, which I'm completely opposed to privatizing. But I would like Ms. Gabbard to tell us what she would do to improve the process of project identification, scope development, request for proposals. I think it's wrong to just ask the developer.
Sure. Thank you, Paul. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Paul. Go for it.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that, project management is a skill that a mayor, especially in a strong mayor form of government, needs to have. And a very hands-on approach and making sure that nothing passes, through the administration without the mayor having looked at it and blessed it. And so as mayor, I would be very involved in a hands-on way with our procurement department, making sure that all of our policies and our processes are in line, that they are tight, and that we are negotiating contracts that have, some really strong teeth in them to hold developers accountable. Now, as far as a city-run project, I agree. I was on city council whenever we first made that vote under Kreisman, and then when we had to make the unfortunate vote to allocate more money under Welch.
Why did it cost so much, the Obama Library?
Well, I mean, there were a lot of things I think that were missed in the the initial look at that building. The asbestos was mentioned.
Yeah.
There was also, flooding and things like that happened after the storms. It was, an unfortunate situation. We're on the other side of it now. We can learn from those mistakes again and make sure that when it comes to these projects, we are staying on top of them.
And that's the voice of St. Petersburg, Councilwoman Brandy Gabbard, also running for mayor this summer. Voters in St. Petersburg will make that decision, and then probably we'll have a runoff that we happen in November. We want to thank Hillsborough County property appraiser Bob Henriquez, who joined us at the top of the show. I want to thank Anthony Madur for running the phones for us today. Skip Sassy on the board for us forever and ever. Love you, Skip. I see Elov in Studio 1, ready to sub in for Joellen Schilke on Art in Your Ear. My name is Ray Roa on behalf of myself and the show co-founder and co-host Mitch Perry. Thank you so much for supporting WMNF Tampa. Hope you have a really good weekend. Enjoy some basketball, enjoy some soccer, and drink water in between every beer.